here. That's what I keep telling myself with these smaller panels, right? If you're in this room, you wanted to be in this room. So we're glad that you're here. We're glad and hoping that you're having a good time. After this session, we're going to be in lunch upstairs, and then we go back to breakouts. So what are your thoughts so far? Who's been here both days? Mostly everybody? Good? So far, good? You writing mom about this home? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Make me sleep good at night. All right, I'd like to welcome to the stage Stan Press, and he can introduce his panelists. Please give Stan and his crew a big round of applause.
Yesterday we
Good.
did a panel for about 12.
Check. Awesome. Well, just a few minutes, guys. We're going to let everyone settle down, and then we'll bring everybody up. Guys, you can just come on up. We'll start when we get a couple more people in here.
No, just go.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right, give me a sec here. All right. Well, thank you everybody for showing up. Today we're going to be talking about esports venues. My name is Stan Press. I'll be your moderator today. And in the world of esports, where would we be without the great places that host us? Some of them are fantastic, some of them are not, and we have some amazing panelists here who are very much involved in that space, trying to make it better for everybody in their respective fields and areas. So real quick, myself, 13 years in gaming, esports, and marketing. I consult right now helping companies figure this world out, but it's not about me. It's about these guys. So I'm going to go down the line, ask them, to each of you to please introduce yourself, tell us about what you are, like what you do, who you are, how you got into it, and each of you are going to get a little bit of a chance to kind of showcase what their venues are. That way you have context for what they're talking about later. So Brian, we'll start off with you.
Hi everyone, Brian Mirakian, Senior Principal with Populous. For those of you that may or may not know what Populous does, we're a global international design practice that focuses on stadium design. So we have done some of the iconic venues around the world, Olympic main stadiums, Yankee Stadium. We're working right now in Tokyo for the 2020 games. And our world has been about the live event experience and how do we create venues really for the course of the last 36 years that bring people together for amazing, unforgettable experiences. And so, where we have focused traditionally has been in the traditional world of sports, but really over the course of the last half decade or so, we have been focused on what is the world, the emerging world of digital entertainment mean to these venues, and how can we create these powerful social experiences in a new realm of esports dedicated facilities. So that's been an initiative that I've led as our director of global esports projects. Stan and I actually, funny enough, began a conversation and a dialogue around what, imagining sort of what these venues may be. And it really was about 4 or 5 years ago.
I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was really grateful of how many things you were able to let me shoot down.
Yeah, but that's kind of how these things start, is these sort of dialogue-driven conversations. And so, for us, when we embark on future thinking, ideation, and kind of like where the market is going, we talk with people like Stan. We talk to people like in the financial industry, people at Goldman Sachs. We are looking at data, and we're looking at kind of like what is shaping the environment around us, and then ultimately, we go through a process, kind of like the automotive industry, of like designing the concept car. And that's what we started to do, and what's been exciting to see is we've reached sort of a tipping point in the industry now where there's a need for physical infrastructure, and we were hired by Infinite Esports a year and a half ago to design their venue in Arlington, for their home and epicenter of esports, for the Esports Stadium Arlington, and that's a great example, I think, of what I would call an early prototype, sort of a day one prototype. That was about a $15 million adaptive reuse project.
Oh, that's it.
Went into an existing building. And then we were recently hired by Comcast to design the $50 million ground up building in Philadelphia, in the heart of the Philadelphia Sports District. And that project will be breaking ground here this summer. But that's a little bit of what we do. I've got a couple videos. I think maybe what I want to do, Stan, is let everybody else introduce themselves, and we can just jump back, and I could share out a little bit. So.
Cool. My name is Matt Devuono. I'm with World Gaming Network. We're based out of Toronto, Canada. World Gaming Network is owned by Cineplex, which is a movie theater chain. So at the time of the acquisition, the vision was to be able to enable a number of our movie theater auditoriums to become mini esports venues. So in same way of kind of retrofitting something that was pre-existing and looking at different ways to be able to utilize a movie theater auditorium and turn it into something that could be used for both esports, competitive gaming within that space, but then also be used naturally as kind of a viewing party vehicle. So that said, we don't exclusively execute our tournaments within our movie theaters because they're not always the right venue for the type of tournament that we want to do. So part of what we look at is where is our tournament going to be the most successful? It could be within one of our theaters, it could be elsewhere. So basically we're venue agnostic, which is part of the exciting part about the rise of esports venues is that there's a whole number of them that could be retrofitted to accommodate a whole bunch of different needs depending on what the needs of that tournament or that event or viewing party is. But from my perspective, my background is with the movie theater chain more so as opposed to esports, which I came into about 4 years ago. So it's really more of an education for everybody, really, kind of as we get going. But to understand how our existing venues can be retrofitted into something that now needs to accommodate this new industry that's coming on pretty strong, as we all know.
Good morning. I'm Joshua Mora. I am the Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships at Full Sail University. We just opened, within the last 3 weeks, an esports stadium on our campus. It's the largest esports stadium on a college campus anywhere in the country. It's called the Fortress. We opened with an internal event, and then a couple of weeks later, we just hosted the NBA 2K ticket event, which is one of their mid-season tournaments. I'll show you pictures of the Fortress in a minute, but the university itself has existed for 40 years. We have 16,000 students, about 7,000 of whom are on campus with us in Winter Park, Florida, which is just outside of Orlando. The rest are online. And as we've had gaming degrees for over 2 decades now, all of our degree programs are aimed towards the entertainment industry, gaming, film, music, and the production and technology thereof. And so as we took some of that approach and background towards developing our esports vertical, which is what I have overseen over the past 3 years, we had already had teams playing at the intramural level and the club level, and we had interest to take them varsity, which was important to us because we don't have any other athletic programs, and in the South, it's kind of a sin if you don't play football on Saturday afternoons. So we needed something to rally around. We chose this, and now we have 85 competitive varsity esports athletes competing on 11 different titles. We have almost 1,000 athletes that are competing on our JV or intramural teams now. And so a part of the vertical, in addition to having support for those teams and building an esports curriculum, which we should be launching sometime in early 2020, and several other aspects of esports, we decided to build a venue. It's 11,000 square feet. It was a $6 million investment from the university, and we'll talk more about that as we go. You want me to start and show the pictures of that, or
I'll just turn it back in order right now. So we're going to go with
Perfect.
Brian. Yeah. So real quick, if you could we have 2 videos from you. One kind of walking visual of the Arlington Arena, and the second following that, the new Comcast Arena. So
Yeah.
let you take it from here.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of context. So as I mentioned earlier, Arlington was completed last November, and it was an adaptive reuse that was funded by the city of Arlington ultimately. So they were sitting on an asset right in the heart of their sports district. There's a new Lowe's Hotel, new ballpark, going up. There's an entertainment district. There's the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, Six Flags. So they've got a whole kind of epicenter of entertainment right there in the center of Arlington. And they were sitting on a convention center that was underperforming. And they came to us and said, how about you take over 100,000 square feet of this building and create a world-class esports venue? And that was really the aspirational goal, was to create day-to-day activity in a gaming center a competition venue that can flex up to about 3,000 seats for their premier events, a production studio where they can stream and produce content out of, a place where they can have teams come in, do boot camps, and then they have their day-to-day operations where they have offices and an academy and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll play this if I can.
Should we step out of the way?
Hit it once more to play it probably.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, just to kind of give you a little color as this plays. This was $15 million, and as I said, a pretty modest investment in the grand scheme of things, and allowed them to really come in and kind of test out this prototype. So it's a mix of these team areas, the places that are activated when they have the events. There's a retail merch experience. There's the gaming center, as I mentioned, where you're having activity every single day. You're having localized events, things of that nature. A huge part of their monetization stream is around the gaming center. And then they have the main space where they can host their big events. And so it's not only esports, it's everything in between. So they can host the premier events, they can do college events, they can have TED Talks, and they can do a mayoral address, and they can monetize it in many different ways because they have the technology and they have just a great venue to do that. And that's a super critical point that I think we'll talk about a little bit more as well. But this is showing some footage from their first event. We built out a production studio. This was about $5 million, frankly, of our $15 million budget. And so they're producing all the content and the shows themselves, and it's been a really good success thus far. But it's day one, and they're learning every day how to operate, program, and monetize the venue. Great support from the city. The Convention Bureau was really behind this project. And I think a good example, again, of like the way that a city can come in and utilize an asset in a different way and use esports as a vehicle. It's a really powerful sort of opportunity.
So we'll have to get back to you on the mayoral addressing later. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. And then real quick, this is a new project. So Christy knows all about this in Philly. And this is an exciting project because this is Comcast's new $50 million ground up venue that they are
15?
50.
Gotcha.
For the Philadelphia Fusion. So this is a 3,500 seat venue in the heart of the Comcast and Cordish entertainment development. It's right outside of Wells Fargo Arena, which is where the Overwatch finals will be held. And it's a super dynamic venue that will be, again, home base for Fusion, all of Comcast esports activity moving forward. Lots of really great premium, just a really powerful and intimate seating bowl that's great for esports, optimization of sight lines, all the sort of things that you want from a premier venue for esports. They'll have a training center, and then they'll activate it with all sorts of different events too, live events, live music, electronic music, TED Talks. We're working with Live Nation as well. So a really robust strategy, and I believe will be the future model moving forward, especially as regionalized franchises, like the Fusion, are looking at purpose-built physical venues moving down the road. So just a little bit of our work as we're kind of moving into the future.
Awesome, thank you for that. So Matt, I'm going to have a couple of your photos that you shared with me about how you guys have set up in your theaters, and if you just said
Sure.
play. Did I spell your name right?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, yes or no? Just run with that.
So the photos are far from any. I'm so jealous of everything that Brian's been doing, and
We'll hook you up with our team.
I can't wait to see what happens in Philadelphia. So just for a bit of context, again, the movie theaters that we've outfitted 24 auditoriums across Canada, since that's where the movie theater chain exists, and primarily it consisted of putting gaming tables in the auditoriums so that they are obviously, kind of mini stage. All the infrastructure in terms of cabling, small broadcast center up in the projection booth, all internet power, all of that stuff has been installed into 24 auditoriums. That said, the auditorium that you're seeing here is not one of those auditoriums. It was one that was custom fit specifically for this event, which was for a GT Sport tournament we did in 2018. And these are setups that we brought in specifically from VRX to be able to outfit how a racing simulator would look in kind of a movie theater auditorium space. So the photo on the bottom right, or the right, I should say, kind of shows you what it would be from a spectator perspective, where you can see everybody's screen. You get a sense of being a spectator, and then the observer, the switcher, would identify exactly what everybody sees on screen. So certainly not to the level of something that would be done at a significantly more professional exhibition of a tournament. Our tournaments are primarily amateur-based anyway. But we want to be able to put a kind of professional polish on something that would feature amateur esports players. Oops. So this one is for our Call of Duty tournament that we've done. We've done 4 Call of Duty tournaments, and we've actually been fortunate enough to engage some of the professional Call of Duty casters from the Call of Duty World League to cast our programs. So obviously the view from the spectator perspective, the setup, there's significantly more lights that we add depending on how much budget we have and how we want the presentation to be seen. Setup for casters as well as players, both at the front of the auditorium. In some occasions we take out some seats and put them back at the end of it, but the infrastructure was built on the premise that we don't want this to be a dedicated auditorium that you can't have an esports event in there on a Saturday and then be showing Avengers there on Sunday, so you can do that. It's completely customizable. It's not dedicated in any way. The only difference is that the infrastructure is built into specific auditoriums and not something that is, we can't move to another auditorium very easily. This is our latest event with way more lights. It looks like something that is much more production heavy, and it was. And it's more just about how we've kind of learned organically about how the esports events that we've put on so far can be scaled. The table that's on the gaming station that's on the right side is not one that we own. So the ones that we bought and have put into all the 24 theaters are really customized to be in more of an amateur space and more of a something that is a little more budget friendly, I'll say. But we have adapted and grown in terms of the scale of our productions to date, and all of this is still within the confines of one movie theater auditorium. So at midnight on that night, the next day they were showing movies in here, and you'd never know that there was an event that took place in there. So it's a dynamic auditorium, and that's kind of the business model for how Cineplex was looking at it, in the way that there's simply not enough content to be able to drive tournaments 365 days a year. It has to be an auditorium that's still generating revenue. So it turns that venue space into something else in the next day, and that was kind of the intent for how these auditoriums were constructed, to be something that's dynamic and interchangeable and can be used for movies as well as esports events, as well as group rentals or TED Talks or anything that we decide to show in that auditorium, so that it's not custom built to do only one thing. There you go, sir.
Nicely done. Okay, so what we have with the Fortress at Full Sail is different from what most other universities have done with what they're calling esports arenas. Ours is much more of an esports stadium, and you'll see the difference momentarily. It's certainly different from what Matt's trying to accomplish with their objectives with Cineplex, and also different from what's being built with at Fusion Arena in Philadelphia and what they've built in Arlington. This is right for us as a university because it aligns with everything that we teach. So this is the Fortress. Our teams are called the Armada. It is 11,200 square feet. I'll show you some of the other spaces. The fold-out seats total just about 300. When we hosted NBA 2K, we had a larger center stage set up, and so we actually had 425 seats available and sold out for all 3 days. We can also do small end stage or large end stage at the end. It is a concert quality performance center in terms of its audio capabilities. You see some of the screens there. So you have 4 hanging down from the center, it's not a scoreboard, but the center console there. Where it says Full Sail University Fortress is an LED ring, 6 panels, 3 on each of the east-west sides, and then a giant LED screen at the end. All told, it's about 10 million pixels of space. We have a full 2-room audio visual production office. It connects to our Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, so we can have, for NBA 2K, we had their setup in that studio, but we're already teaching students to be shoutcasters through that and through our sports marketing and media program. We'll take some other pictures here. So this is from another corner. Good Cubs fan there, from Chicago originally. And so this is how it's set up. The goal and the objective of it is not only to have our 11 teams playing, but we're also partnered with Magic Gaming out of the NBA 2K. So next year when they go to home market, we will host some, if not all, of their games, depending on how they structure. We have another home market partner that we've not announced, but everything is signed. We're just waiting for their schedule to come out for 2020.
Nothing you can hint at?
I'm sorry?
Nothing you can hint about, or?
Well, you can imagine one that might have certain interest in being located in Central Florida. We'll just leave it at that. It'll be coming soon. But the goal of it, the objective is to host those kinds of events as well as to appeal to all of the different kinds of gaming communities. We want to be as agnostic as possible. So we want to bring in big external events with more franchise-oriented leagues such as NBA 2K or such as Overwatch League. Thank you for getting that. That we would have there, but we also want to appeal to the traditional gaming communities. We've hosted those kinds of events in our other venue. So we have another venue on the other side of campus that is where we produce all of the content for the WWE's NXT brand. And we just a month ago hosted a Smash Brothers tournament there with Hungry Box that was an all-day thing called the Overlords of Orlando. So we will do some of those in here and in that venue as well. So we want to continue to appeal to those segments, the fighting games, the battle royale type games, etc., as well as the more modern professional sports type of events. So this was our soft open where we introduced it to our community in early March, and then our first event was a Fortnite event that we did internally to kick off our Hall of Fame week. That was in mid-May, and then we hosted NBA 2K just a couple of weeks ago.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate that. And let's start with you, Josh. A couple questions for you in terms of you are using this for what purpose really? Because you're not looking to monetize it the same way that, say, Matt would be normally, or Brian, just because they're completely different verticals here.
Right.
How are you looking to take advantage of this?
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, you think about what the ticketing revenue might have been, even for NBA 2K, which is a big marquee event. So we're only having 425 seats available. We want the arena to be full, the entirety of the competition. It's 3 7-hour-long days of competition. There aren't that many tickets to sell. So the ticketing revenue is, I don't even know exactly what we made, probably around $20,000. It's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, but it's not something that's going to make anybody jump up and down. For us, the key is enrollments. Anything that helps us grow enrollments, both in our existing programs, assuming we do an esports curriculum, that new program, our teams are populated and our intramural and JV programs are populated by students from all of our degree programs. Our best player is an entertainment business student who plays Dragon Ball. He's one of the top 25 Dragon Ball players in the world.
Dragon Ball Z, the fighting game, correct?
Correct. So another player is a great Hearthstone player and a great Call of Duty player, and he is a game design student. But they're coming from all different programs. So if we see incremental growth in our existing programs as well as new programs, that's the win. That's our primary revenue driver. And having a facility like this, where we can host events that are supported by an organization such as the NBA or such as a partner that might be from that other league that I just mentioned.
Or internally as well, correct?
And internally as well, for sure.
Got it. So then, the programs that you've seen so far, is it actually increased any attendance that you may have noticed already? Has it done anything that you can immediately go back to the board and say, this is why we did this, this is why we justify this?
It's too early to say that we've increased enrollments because of that, because again, we've just opened the building. But yes, certainly we see the attention and the views that we're getting, the eyeballs that we're getting through the various promotions and publicities of the events.
Got it, thank you. So Matt, question for you, because you have to fill in all these amazing theaters with all these amazing esports events or community events or amateur events. Any challenges in working with such a limited such a limited venue, or multiple types of venues? Because these are going to be multiple theaters all across Canada, right?
Yep.
And how many were there again?
24.
And I'm assuming they're not all the same.
They're all the same in terms of the infrastructure that's in place, but the seating is all different in each of them, and all the theaters are built at different times, so there's different logistical challenges with each building. But the biggest challenge is really the costs that are associated with putting on events in that many theaters at one time, or a variety of times.
So will there be multiple events and multiple theaters at simultaneously in multiple cities?
That's how it started. And I'll take one step back just to kind of explain that a little bit, to give some context, is that when we first started, when World Gaming was first acquired, what we held was an online tournament that started on worldgaming.com. It then went down to regional events. So you would play in the Vancouver Call of Duty bracket, and if you won online, you would then move into the theater to compete in the regional event. If you won at your theater, you would then come into Toronto to compete in the final. So we ran 4 tournaments that consisted of online to regional to final, and the regional events were all 24 locations. So you would have Calgary and an Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto brackets where players could compete, and we just take the best of each of those regions and bring them in. The cost of doing that is challenging. Yeah, that has changed, and largely because of the cost. So what this infrastructure has now afforded us, and again, as we learn and kind of grow organically about what our business is capable of, is it's provided more of an opportunity for us to do localized and regional only events that are specifically focused on those individual markets, to be able to create more of a community that isn't reliant on either online or moving on to something else, but creating more frequency with those programs. And that's actually what I'm currently developing right now to kind of build in each of those markets.
Have you been able to test with that at all yet?
We've had success in terms of some great ideas and some awesome PowerPoint presentations, and talking with partners and a lot of people here, but we haven't activated anything in terms of that. Let me take a step back. We have activated something, but it was kind of a learning opportunity. So we had a Lego program that was some of the Lego games. They're very family oriented. So we had a kids program.
Sign me up.
Yeah. We ran some of those, and the only reason we didn't continue with them is because Warner Brothers pulled the plug on the Lego Dimensions game, which was the Toys to Life game.
I was really heard about that too.
Yeah, so it accommodated basically creating a social experience in an environment for kids to come together and pay $10 and you get a t-shirt and a place to play with your friends and see your battle arena played on the big screen behind you, and it was a lot of fun. We ran it for about 2 years.
But that was more just creating a local community.
Yes, it was local community only.
Got it. And that's where you had the idea to move towards this more local experience and just have more frequency events. And was there a thought to have a national or a Canadian league with that once you get to a certain point?
That is part of one of those awesome PowerPoint presentations that I was speaking about.
All right, so we'll have to check back next year then.
Yeah, it's part of the idea, part of the concept.
And just help me understand the monetization side of things, because you're there to sell tickets. Are these going to be more premium tickets? Is this something that is going to be in the range of how much per ticket? How much is it going to compare to a movie ticket? Can you share any of that?
Sure. So the Lego program was about $10 to $15 per person, and allowed people to come in for 2 hours to play and compete and just play and have fun. For the larger scale tournaments, from what I showed, those tickets would range from about, and they have to be comparable to a movie theater ticket, just because that's how the community is looking at going into this environment and comparing. So a ticket to attend an event all day might be $10, might be $15. We would also sell a fan experience ticket, which would give you a bag of swag and a reserved seat and access to the players or the casters for autographs, that kind of thing. That would range anywhere from $50 to $60 for those larger scale tournaments. So the monetization opportunity was there. It certainly wasn't, offsetting all the costs, but it was a little bit of revenue that we could say that we earned, $4,000 to $5,000 from ticket sales.
Gotcha. And is the thought that you'd go to scale as much as possible, and just the ticket sales you'd sell there, would that lead to the monetization, the profitability that you guys are looking for? Or is there something else that you want to add to the mix?
Well, sponsorship and partnerships is always part of the mix, and creating those programs in order for sponsors to engage with us is part of the opportunity there. So without the content, we don't have anything to sell, and vice versa.
Got it. Thank you. So Brian, back to you. Beautiful videos, always just inspiring to see. What did you learn from going from Arlington to Philly now? Because one is, as you said, it was a prototype, it was a test in a lot of ways, and it's a very expensive prototype. Grateful that they could actually do that, justify that. Tell us some things that you learned from that and how you want to fix them in Philly.
Well, I mean, we've learned a lot. And, I think that, what's exciting about this entire space is that we're still, very formational. There's just a lot of maturation that's occurred in the market itself over the course of even 18 months, from the point that we opened Arlington to now embarking on this new project with Comcast. I think the thing to learn really is that there's not like a one-size-fits-all, solution here. And it has to be, it's like any type of project. It has to be the right project for that market, the right project for that client, the right project for that city, the right project for that community, and the right project for how it kind of fits into the broader scale business strategy. And so what's happening with the Fusion, it's an entirely different approach. We have, in that case, we have Comcast as a client that has a broad scale sort of aspiration around esports in general. They own a team in the Philadelphia Fusion, but they have a broad scale sort of entertainment strategy around esports. It's going to continue to build and evolve over the course of the next decade plus, right? And so in Arlington, it was just a different sort of model. We had, in that case, we had Neil Liebman, who bought Infinite, and wanted to sort of purchase a portfolio of esports, but also wanted to plant a flag essentially in the center of the United States and really create a cultural epicenter for esports in Arlington, but had a kind of a different approach, ultimately to what he wanted to do in terms of that venue. And as I mentioned, the city was fully behind it. We had a convention visitors bureau that was fully behind it. We had a mayor that was fully behind it. We had.
And are they funding a lot of the venues?
They funded it. Yeah,
the whole thing.
They funded the entire project. So they funded.
Actually, let's talk about that for a second. How does another city get that same kind of experience?
Well, I mean, I think in that case, again, it was a broader scale strategy, right? Where they wanted to bring people in. They saw esports as a mechanism for tourism. They saw it as a mechanism to bring people to a venue. They saw it as a mechanism to book events, of course. They saw it as a mechanism to bring award shows in and conferences and fill hotel rooms, and really create, again, kind of a cultural epicenter in the heart of their community, and ultimately wanted to fly a flag in a metroplex, frankly, where you have Frisco and you have all sorts of other sort of tech hubs that are happening in Dallas. 8-10 million people, whatever it is now. They wanted to create their own brand within the city, and esports was a vehicle.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a question just on that segue? Do you think that a city requires something like an Overwatch team to be in that city in order to justify that demand, or do you think it can be done without something that's?
I think my opinion, I think, can be done without it. Frankly, if you talk to my clients in Arlington, they're hopeful that Dallas Fuel will ultimately, will play their home dates in that venue. They don't have a deal structured yet. Are they going to be, able to monetize that without an Overwatch team? Yes. If I asked them that, they would, just because of their ability to book a number of other premier events, and also create the sort of things that Josh is talking about in the sense of it's esports and it's a premier venue for esports, but there are so many ways that they can create monetization by all sorts of different sort of programming. And the one point that I would just say is the one thing that we've learned throughout this whole process is simply that you have to create a physical venue that can grow and adapt as esports grows and adapts over the course of the next 5-10 years. And we're going to see a lot of change. We're going to see new game titles come in. We're going to see new genres potentially happen. We're going to see, lots of the popular, titles like League and Overwatch and Counter-Strike. They'll have staying power.
I'm just waiting for Auto Chess to start taking over.
But there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen, and you have to have a venue that ultimately can cater to those different cultures of fans, because there's many different cultures of fans. There's a lot of different, again, sort of aspects of just the technical requirements of these games, whether it's a 6v6 or 5v5, being able to have a stage environment, for instance, that can flex, or, a battle royale where you have 100 people in a big space. So
well, that's just when you stack them on top of one another.
Stack them on, there just has to be flexibility and adaptability, one in your strategy, but also in the physical environment that you're creating, so that you can really have it be whatever you need it to be. And I think that's in terms of the big lesson that I've learned as a designer and somebody that's helping our clients design these venues, is how do you design in the most flexible, adaptable way that can, one, give you a robust programming strategy, day one, but also allow you to grow over time.
And if I can jump in on Matt's question, I think it's flexible venues or it's multiple venues, but more than it being one home market team, it is about creating a sense that there is a grassroots support for different kinds of communities within esports and within gaming in general. And we've done that in Orlando as well. So we have the big Amway Center, we have our smaller theater, we have support from both of our mayors, the mayor of Orlando, the mayor of Orange County, and all of the different stakeholders that are interested in esports in Central Florida. And I think what's starting to emerge is there are starting to be 3 real big hubs, Dallas, Philadelphia, Orlando, which have really pushed forward to become epicenters for gaming. We have a lot of that infrastructure already, right? We have hotels, we have tourism, we have great weather, and we have palm trees, which is an advantage over Philadelphia. But trying to support all of the different gaming communities and getting all of the stakeholders who have an interest, which includes venues at the center of that.
No, that's the fascinating thing, because we want to figure out how do other cities learn from this. Is this just that an initiative happens with the Economic Development Council that someone there just says, hey, let's do something cool, we have a budget for this? Or is it because there's an Overwatch team, or there's a college the university that pushes it through? Any thoughts on how we can grow this in other cities? And what would be the first step? Or is it multiple first steps?
Like Toronto, for example.
Yeah.
City of Champions now, Toronto. I think it is about recognizing that even though that there may be some competition for events or space or breadth within the community. I mean, certainly we compete with the University of Central Florida as a marquee esports collegiate team organization, trying to draw from the same pool of students. We want them all to come play with us, and realizing that we're better if we support each other in that than we are if we're at each other for that. If they're hosting an event, we should be there supporting it, we should be playing in it. If we're hosting an event, we want their students to come and play or spectate or whatever it might be. And the same is true, again, in Central Florida. We have 2 major media companies that go at each other, in Disney and NBC Universal Comcast. So
this is like, could we maybe see a Florida Mayhem and a Philly Fusion show match in either city?
Absolutely. Yep. The sports world and the esports world, everybody needs villains, right? We want to have a team that we root for and a team that we actively root against. And but we can be in supporting the Fusion and the Mayhem as a part of that. We can feed each other.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the exciting thing of what's happening with this regionalized model is you're creating the same things that you have in traditional sports, which is you're cheering for a hometown team. There's nothing better than that, right? But to your point though about how does it happen in different places? I think what's interesting about esports is there's a common perception that you need a big market like LA for it to work, right? You need that sort of critical mass of the teams training here and things like that, and the publishers, and you have all of that sort of built-in infrastructure. And esports absolutely will work here, but it will also work in a place like Kansas City or Austin or smaller markets.
You're just saying Kansas City because you live there.
That's because I live. Yeah, but there's the thing that's cool about esports is that it truly is global, and the passion for esports is just as powerful in a place like that than in a major market. There's obviously built-in elements of success in terms of having Arlington is great because you have DFW right there. You get teams that can fly in from all over the world. It's one stop, right? And so you have elements of infrastructure that make a lot of sense. You mentioned Orlando, and all those sort of things. But I do believe that as these cities, convention bureaus are looking at this opportunity. If you want to build a culture, and you have a group of people that are dedicated to building a culture around esports and bringing people together and socializing around esports and committing this sort of the funding to bringing events in and to building that culture up, it can be a model of success. And you don't need to have a professional team. I really don't believe that, just from what we've seen so far. But you do have to be committed to building a culture. And you can't just say, okay, I've got a convention center. We're gonna just bring in 50 events. That's not a realistic model. But if you're committed to affiliating with local universities, affiliating with high schools, frankly, putting on, building out sort of a gaming center. You're going to bring people in, on a day-to-day basis, and doing the sort of things like you're doing in Toronto as well. But building that culture, you can build the venues and the sort of, the broader scale strategy once you commit to that.
And so a lot of the venues that you're looking at, are they going to be aiming for running the marquee championships as well? Do you think that's something you can sustain, or is that something you'd still recommend they go to a larger venue?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just take I'll take Philly, for example. So they'll have the Overwatch final in Wells Fargo Center, and it's literally like 200 yards away from where our venue will be, and that's an 20,000 seat venue, right? You've got Amway Center in Orlando, where if you want to do a championship caliber event, and like right now there's maybe like 5 of those, 7 of those, you can go into a venue like that. The real sweet spot that we see, frankly, is that venue that's like 25, 3,500, maybe 5,000 seats, where one, you can have many more sort of regionalized, sort of lead-in tournament type events, but it's also, frankly, an awesome experience because people are close to the action. You can really create a dynamic experience. It's sensory. It's really powerful. You put the premium in the right place. You have awesome sight lines to the screens. You can do all sorts of things. And oh yeah, you can program it like, many more days out of the year because you're being able to fill it with a lot more events. If you want to do the big event, go into the big arena. You can always do that.
I was going to say, could we give VIP passes or hookups for the finals with everybody here?
No, we could not.
Worth a shot. So, real quick, guys in the back over there, we're doing questions. We've got a few minutes. All right, we'll figure out some questions. We'll keep talking in the meantime. All right, we do have a few questions, and wow, it gets not only really bright, but kind of warm, actually. So we'll start with the first question here. What are the biggest challenges in bringing esports events to existing venues? What are the key factors in decision-making? And which one of you would like to start? Maybe Josh or Matt.
I can jump in with that one just because we have existing venues that we're bringing esports into. The challenges are always on the technology side. Do you have good internet? And if you don't, then don't do it there. That's basically the bottom line for any esports event, from my experience. I'm sure a lot would agree. But it's also, I talked about the fact that our tournaments are kind of venue agnostic, so we go where they're going to be the most successful. A movie theater auditorium where you've got spectators that are going to be there for 5, 6, 7, 10 hours a day don't just want to sit there. They want to be able to get up and walk around, and you want to be able to have other activities and experiences that they can engage with. The movie theater auditorium isn't always the best way for that experience to happen. Not that you can't get in and out, but it's not conducive to that kind of walking around environment. So the layout is another factor, but also just, how many people do you need to accommodate as spectators? Is it even a spectator event? Is it just a closed event where you want to be able to broadcast it? So there's a number of factors that go into it by deciding which venue you're going to go into based on what type of event it actually is. Our Call of Duty events ran over 2 full days, but they still ran in an auditorium, and we worked around what those logistics were. We made it work, but would I have rather been in something that had a little bit more space? Sure. But it didn't mean that we couldn't do it there. It was just looking at how we were able to accommodate what we were working with in the venue that we had.
So there's another, someone else want to add to
Yeah, I
that?
was just saying, for us, it's about finding the right events and making sure we appeal across as wide a spectrum of our community as possible. League of Legends fans are not Fortnite fans, are not Madden fans, and we have all of them in our population, and we want to appeal to all of them as future prospective students. So we need to be able to be articulate and eloquent in all of the different languages of all of the different gaming communities. And as we look at both external and internal events, LAN events and corporate events, we really need to find a way to strike that balance. So we opened with Fortnite, we followed with NBA 2K, our next event is going to be a LAN play Call of Duty event, and then something that we have coming up in August is probably going to be a Counter-Strike event. So trying to appeal across a wide variety of different types of games.
Thank you, guys. So, because this is somewhat relevant to this previous question, we'll skip to the third one down. Can you articulate the gap in production infrastructure, including bandwidth needs, between a traditional sports venue and one built with esports in mind? And maybe that's more you, Brian?
Yeah. So in terms of the infrastructure gap. So I think that in reality, the sort of things that we build into traditional venues, very similar to what we would build into an esports venue. I think the big difference is that, you know, when we build a traditional sports venue, a lot of times you're dealing with a linear broadcast where they're bringing in trucks, they're bringing in all this sort of things. What we've found is that if you can build kind of the technology backbone where you can have the production studio, for instance, that exists, where you can, one, produce the event, but also produce the content, and also just allow, you know, events to just come into your venue, and you've got a plug-and-play model where they're just basically bringing in a flight pack or whatever, and they're tapping into your infrastructure you've already built out. That's how you monetize. Because if you can basically take out of the equation having to have an event roll in and you know, invest $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 in like bringing in their light packages, bringing in their sound system, bringing in a bunch of LED screens and things like that, but you already have a venue that's invested in that infrastructure, and you're just monetizing because they're basically bringing the talent in, that's really the strategy out of it. So it is an important part of it, and the technology infrastructure is a unique aspect that differs from traditional events. But it's as you budget these sort of projects, it can be up to 25% of your overall cost, and it has to be done in such a way that it's smart and it gives you, you know, let's say 10 years of life, frankly, before you're upgrading that technology.
So super quick question here on the arenas. Are they modular enough to accommodate shifting game genres? For example, could they do 100-player stages for Battle Royale? So like kind of down the line, yes, no, maybe.
Yeah, I'd just say yes. That's the big key, you know, and what, you know, new genres are going to happen. So you just have to be flexible. And so we do a thing where we're in Fusion where we take out all the seats on the floor, and you can put 100, you know, stations in, or do 6v6 or 5v5. So it has to accommodate that.
Is that something you guys can figure out?
Yeah, in a movie theater environment, we couldn't do 100 people sitting down, but you could do 100 people mobile game kind of tournament in the same way that Super League executes a lot of their programs as well. So I would say yes, if it is modular, it kind of has to be to accommodate what the growing needs of the industry are.
And Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll play anything.
Great. And we're going to close with one last question. When you build out the arenas or choose the venues, do you factor in how partnership brands can best experientially activate? For example, concourse, outside, etc.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I'll you know, just give a little color on that. You know, so that's a huge piece of this overall equation is what sort of partnerships, what kind of brands, you know, can activate it in the building. You know, ultimately, that is one of the differences between an esports venue and a traditional venues, because you know, when you go to a traditional venue, for instance, like it's a 3-hour experience. You know you're going to go to a hockey game.
In line for food, right?
Yeah, well, you get in line for food, but you know, if you're going to a hockey game, it's 3 periods. And it's a real sort of finite thing. I'm going to be in the venue for 3.5 hours. If you go to like an esports event, you can be there for 9-10 hours on a lead-up day to a championship event. And so being able to create concourse environments, social spaces where you can activate brands, where you can do fun things like meet and greets and cosplay and all sorts of, you know, cool things around merch and retail and food and beverage experiences and all sorts of things. That's a unique difference. And because monetization around partnerships is so critical to the overall model, you have to be able to build those opportunities in. So I think it's absolutely essential. We're certainly doing that.
Yeah, so we're super quick from each of you. I'd like to figure out what kind of experiential opportunities are left in the movie theater and potentially in your arena.
Experiential opportunities?
Yeah, so anything because you talk about how you can bring brands and partnerships in there to additionally monetize. What can you do with that theater-like experience?
Well, I mean, if you're in the auditorium, that's primarily where the gaming is, but if you're going to be in and around the theater lobby space, there's everything that includes merchandise booths to be able to have walk up and play opportunities. As Brian mentioned, you can have autograph signings, that kind of thing. So there's really, you know, there was another panel where we talked about different types of experiences that brands want, and you have to kind of leave it up to the brands to say, well, here's what we're thinking that's going to monetize what we want to do and achieve our goals as a sponsor. Can you do this? And the right answer is yes, and you just figure out how to do it. But yeah, I would just say it's, you know, the opportunity is limitless to be able to do it within a venue, whether it's custom built or whether you're within something that's pre-existing.
And our answer is yes, and we have a title sponsorship available. We can talk about that off stage if you want to, if anybody's interested.
I'll also be off stage.
That's right. And so, but I mean, we are the ultimate experiential. We have, you know, 16,000 students, and they are the, you know, the people who are going to be in this industry in the future. So our message on that front is come play with us. If you're looking to figure out how your title, how your game, if you're a publisher or a developer, will play in an esports space, Our arena, I mentioned it's next to the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting Studios. On the other side is our user experience lab, where we've done testing for wargaming.net and the WWE and various defense contractors. So come play with us in that space. Come be with our students. Come insert your product into our curriculum. We're open to that. There are ways that we can do that with our accrediting body. Come just experiment in any way. We have all of those kinds of opportunities available with that population from the university that has placed people in the gaming world for over 20 years now.
Awesome. Well, because no one is around to say no, just to cut us off. So, real quick, so we can finish up here. Down the line, starting with Josh, where do you see the venue space evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Super down the line. We can.
Yeah, I think every community is going to want to have some attachment to it. I mean, we already see them popping up in a lot of different places. I think the message is any community and university has to find what's right for them. I think what we have built at Full Sail in Orlando is very different from what will be successful in another place. SUNY Canton just put theirs out with a wonderful video on YouTube. What they've got is terrific for them. It's not what we want to do, but it's a great spot for a small school to be staking their claim in esports. So I see that more and more universities will be doing that, but it's important that from a university standpoint, and we'll talk about this at a panel at 2:30, that everybody finds what's right for their school.
I would agree. I mean, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all, as we've talked about, but I do see the opportunity in the future being kind of an amalgam of something that is custom built, but maybe not to the extreme stature for the ones that Brian's building, but to understand what is right for each community. And it might be something as simple as a movie theater auditorium, but I think there will be a surge of dedicated esports spaces that are either modular or specific to whatever the needs of that community are.
So I would say in the future, because we're moving so fast, I think that we're going to see esports anchored entertainment districts, frankly, in the next 5 years. And it may happen in Asia first, but I think
like everything fun does.
But I think that I think that we will see a really robust entertainment district based around esports, where you can have a premier venue, where you can have retail, where you can have merch, you can have developer labs, and you can have sort of live site experiences where thousands of people can come and gather and watch a game in a plaza like they would the World Cup, condos, living spaces, elite training, all of those things coming together where you can create critical mass 365 in an urban center. I think you're going to see that, and I'm very excited to see that. So, but that would be our vision.
Awesome. So before we finish up, I will say, catch us afterwards. If you have any questions, especially if you want to hear all the fun stuff that Brian and I had to cut. We did their first round of workshops. I'm sure if he's bold enough to share, he'd love to. Otherwise, please, big round of applause